Cry is the leader of the world's strongest clan, Strange Grief, and is widely respected for his wisdom and power. However, in reality, he is extremely weak and just wants to find a way to abandon his position. We see Cry standing in line at a treasure hunter's clan meeting, clearly not wanting to be there, but he has no choice. In this world, treasure hunters are basically celebrities as they explore treasure chests around the globe facing ghosts, all without any health insurance. It's a very dangerous job, but the promise of fame and fortune motivates dozens of people to become treasure hunters every year. To do this, they often join a clan like First Step, for example, which is widely known in the capital as one of the best of all time. It is made up of teams that join together to help each other. The reason so many people are present to join is that unless you're called Jinwoo, there's a limit to how far you can go as a solo hunter. Cry was trying to stay unnoticed, but suddenly a girl behind him starts talking and asks if he's there to join a team as well. Cry tries the old tactic of ignoring her until she goes away, but before he realizes it, she's already in front of him introducing herself. Her name is Ruda and she's a level 3 hunter. She extends her hand to Cry, but he refuses to shake it, though he does say his name. She's disappointed that Cry didn't shake her hand, but she quickly gets over it and starts talking more about herself. She had been hunting alone until now, but she found a vault called White Wolf's Den and couldn't handle it by herself, so she decided to come and join a team. At this point, the man in front of them turns around and asks if Ruda should really be trying to take on such dangerous vaults like White Wolf's Den while she's still at level 3. He smirks in disdain and calls her an inexperienced amateur, since even at level 3 she's still basically a beginner compared to the other professional hunters. As the argument heats up, Ruda gets really angry and Cry wishes he had stayed home to avoid getting involved with them. Ruda pulls out her knives and is about to attack the man, but before she can do anything, a guard approaches and reminds Ruda if she continues, she'll be banned from the clan meeting. She realizes she lost her temper for a moment, so she puts her knives away and apologizes for the incident, while Cry tries to act as if he wasn't there. A little later, Cry finally enters the clan meeting and Ruda is still with him since he's the only person she knows there. She's impressed by all the powerful hunters around and feels a bit overwhelmed since she's never been in a place like this before. She asks Cry if he's been there before and he responds that this is his 5th time. Ruda then thinks he must be a terrible hunter if he has to keep coming back to the recruitment meeting. After all, talent is everything among hunters, so even a nobody can make a name for themselves and rise through the ranks. Ruda notices a group of people in flashy outfits across the room and asks Cry about them. He informs her that group is called Arcbrave, and of all the groups recruiting today, they are undeniably the strongest. As a group, they managed to complete a level 7 vault with only 6 members, so they are widely respected. If you get recruited by their leader Arc Rodan, you practically have a guaranteed hunting career, though he is very picky about his selection criteria. Ruda is intrigued and asks about the empty table in the corner of the room, but before Cry can say anything, the guy from before shows up and says he'll explain everything. Ruda doesn't want help from him after the previous argument, but Greg keeps explaining anyway and says the table belongs to the group that founded this clan Stragri. The group was made up of talented youths who arrived in the capital a few years ago and became known as Strange Grief. However, what others don't know is that the legendary group is made up of Cry's childhood friends. Apparently, there were rumors that Strange Grief would be recruiting today, but since their spot is empty, Greg assumes the rumors were false. At this point, a boy who came to apply for Strange Grief realizes they haven't arrived yet and gets furious because he believes he'll become the strongest hunter in the world someday, and the only group worthy of joining is that one. Greg finds the boy amusing, but Ruda doesn't have the courage to say anything since the boy is a higher level than her. At this moment, a girl named Tino approaches, ready to shut the red-haired boy up with violence because she believes she's the only one who deserves to enter Stragri. Tino's partner tries to calm her down, saying it's not worth causing a scene even if the red-haired boy is being really annoying. For a moment, it seemed like they had calmed down enough to avoid a fight, but then Greg jumps in with his top-notch provocation and suddenly the whole room is fueling the fire. With the brawl now inevitable, Tino and the boy get ready to face off. Cry realizes things are about to get chaotic and doesn't want to be around when that happens, so he asks Ruda to leave with him. When the fight is about to start and Tino is ready to kill the boy just because of his arrogance, she suddenly senses a familiar presence nearby. The second she spots Cry, she forgets all about the fight and runs straight to him. Cry is caught off guard by the sudden attack, stumbles backward, and Tino nervously calls him Master and asks if he saw her losing her temper. Arc also approaches and greets Cry as he had been waiting for his arrival. They couldn't start the clan meeting without Cry anyway, since he's the master of the clan and the leader of Stragri. Everyone who didn't already recognize him is shocked to learn this, as it means Cry is the most important person there. However, all the attention he's getting makes him feel sick and he really just wants to go home. We then get a flashback from a few years ago when Cry and his childhood friends arrived in the capital. They were clearing out all the beginner vaults in record time, but there was just one problem. Cry had no idea what he was doing. He was saved from a monster, and his companions thought he was deliberately lowering his guard to act as bait, so he went along with the plan, but he was about to be devoured. They all shared the same dream of becoming exceptional hunters, but unlike the other 5, Cry was exceptionally ordinary. He knew that sooner or later he would become a burden to the group and didn't want his friends to hate him for his weakness, so he made the decision to leave the group on his own. However, when he tried to leave, fate just laughed in his face, and in the end he was named the group's leader. That's how he arrived at his current position as the leader of his truly talented childhood friends, but he really wishes he could retire from being a hunter. Ruda and Greg still can't believe they had been talking to the clan master the whole time, and while Cry is sitting in his chair, Ark approaches and asks if he arrived late on purpose to observe the crowd like one of the commoners. Cry denies it and says he just overslept, but Ark doesn't believe him and is convinced Cry was late on purpose. For some reason, no matter how hard Cry tries to explain himself, people always interpret him in a way that makes him seem better than he really is. Tino doesn't like how close Ark is to Cry, so she wants to kick him out of the clan, but Cry won't do that. Tino is a level 4 hunter who is also an apprentice to one of Cry's childhood friends named Liz, so she spends a lot of time with him. Ark asks Cry if he has any good candidates in mind for recruitment, but honestly, there's no need to add new members to the clan at the moment. However, since Ark almost never recruits new members, Cry takes the opportunity and asks if Ark would seriously consider any recommendation he makes. Ark says he'll accept anyone Cray chooses, which surprises everyone, so the vice captain tries to dissuade him from making such a hasty decision. However, Ark interrupts her and says that anyone Cray chooses will be worthy of joining his group. Tino starts blushing because she thinks Cry is considering recommending her, but she also doesn't like Ark, so she's a bit torn about whether to accept or not. Suddenly, the boy from before, whose name is Gilbert, steps forward in front of the crowd, completely ready to beg if necessary to be accepted by Cry. Cry tries to think if Gilbert would be a good choice or not, but quickly gives up since he's terrible at judging people's character. He has no idea how to tell if someone will become strong in the future, so he decides to leave it to luck. He tells Gilbert that he's willing to recommend him, but there's one condition before that. As a hunter, the most important thing is to ensure you always win, and if you don't have strength, you'll end up putting your team members in danger, so Cry wants him to prove he has the ability to always win. Also, ever since Cry started his career as a hunter, he has never lost, though that's because he's never actually been in a real fight. Either way, Cry pulls out one of his artifact rings and announces to all the hunters there that the first person to present the ring to Ark will be accepted into his group, and with that, he tosses the ring into the air to watch the circus unfold. The first person to grab the ring is Gilbert, but that doesn't last long, as not even a second passes before Tino leaps onto him and knees him in the face so hard that he's sent flying to the other side of the room. Gilbert probably needs a doctor now, but no one is focusing on him at the moment because the ring is rolling across the floor, and while everyone hesitates initially, it doesn't take long for everyone to start fighting over it. At this point, Cry decides to leave, and even though the bar is being destroyed as he leaves, he says it's not his problem and heads home. However, the next morning, the problem becomes his as the bar fight makes headline news. Apparently, the entire place was destroyed because of the fight, but luckily there were no civilian casualties in the end. However, as a result of the events, Eva informs him that the Explorers Association wants a meeting with him, and Cry already knows that means he's in deep trouble. He asks how Ark reacted to the news, and Eva says he actually took it as a joke and laughed about the situation. Since Ark probably isn't mad, Cry wants to take advantage of his good mood and send him the bill to rebuild the bar, in addition to asking him to go deal with the meeting with the association, but Eva informs him that the meeting is specifically for him, so there's no way he can escape this time. Even if he tries to ignore it, Gark, the association manager, will hunt him down as he always does, so Cry gives in and agrees to go, but he'll use his secret weapon to resolve it as quickly as possible, and that secret weapon is kneeling and apologizing. He also argues that the only damage was to the bar, and since no one was hurt and the bar owner was compensated for the repairs, there shouldn't be any more issues. Gark didn't even have the chance to yell at Cry yet, but after seeing Cry apologize, he lets it go for now. However, even though there are no official complaints against him, Cry still needs to take responsibility for his actions, which is why Gark assigns him a mission and he has no right to refuse it. The association receives all sorts of missions for hunters, but with such a large volume, there are always missions that are either too difficult or pay so little that no one wants to do them. These missions are what hunters call chores, and Cry really doesn't want to have to deal with one of those, so he tries to pretend he's too important to be tasked with a chore. However, Gark isn't letting him off the hook, so he's forced to pick one. Cry opens the mission book and starts looking for the easiest one, and out of all the available missions, the lowest level is 3, so he chooses that. He planned to just throw the job at Ark, but when he goes to find him, he's informed by Tino that Ark is in a meeting with some nobles. He'll be gone for a while, and no one else is around, so Cry doesn't have many options to get rid of his job. At that moment, he notices that Tino is wearing his ring, which means she was the winner of his little game the previous day, but setting that aside, he asks if she's available at the moment. Tino gets all excited because she thinks he's about to ask her out on a date, but to her dismay, he says he has a mission for her. She immediately tries to run away, but even though she's fast, Cry has his ways to catch up to her. He summons Silver the Wolf Chain and instructs it to capture Tino, and soon enough, Cry has her tied to a chair to discuss the mission with her. She feels betrayed because she just wanted to go on a date with Cry, but now he's forcing her to do this horrible mission on her own. Cry asks if the problem is that she doesn't want to do it alone, and Tino responds that she wouldn't mind the idea if Cry went with her. However, that would mean Cry would have to do actual work, so he opts to send Tino on the mission with a group of hunters he met yesterday. Rewinding 6 years, the most powerful clan of a region, then unnamed, arrives at the Adventurers Association to register their group. As usual, Cry tries to dissuade the team from moving forward and doesn't even want to enter. But his companions are unwilling to give up at this point. Lacking any confidence, he claims he'll only hold the team back, but his friends insist he leads them, no matter the cost, and declare it's no longer up for discussion. Since Cry is stalling, the hothead of the group barges in, kicking the door open with all the attitude in the world and introducing himself as Luke Cycle, the best swordsman in the world. Beside him, Liz Smart tells Luke not to hog the spotlight and humbly presents herself as the best thief in the universe. Luke then explains to a bystander that he's the greatest of them all because, as Cry always says, truly strong people don't choose their weapon. Since Luke wields a wooden sword, it's obvious he's the most dangerous. Left without a place to hide, Cry only wants the fiery delinquent to stop talking about him that way. Nevertheless, it's time for the boy to register the clan's name and symbol. So the receptionist hands him a piece of paper, explaining that a team's name represents its spirit. Since the youths hadn't thought about that detail, Cry had to make something up on the spot. In his mind, it was the perfect chance to choose a terrible name so they would remove him as leader. Thus, he scribbled a strange design resembling a skull and named the group Strange Grief. Everyone in the group found the name awful, so Cry used it as evidence of his lack of leadership skill. But, as soon as he threatened to step down, all his friends reversed their opinions and adopted the name as if it were the most genius idea ever. And that's how the Strange Clan was born. And wow, this guy has an incredible talent for not escaping tough situations. Jumping to the present, Greg is speechless upon discovering that the skinny, sickly-looking guy is actually the master of the Pagadas clan, the man known as Thousand Tricks. Upon hearing the name, Cry reflects that this was the second title he received as leader of Stragri, since renowned treasure hunters usually earn special names from the association and become idols. Despite everyone's insistence, Gilbert refuses to believe that this guy is as amazing as they say. Tino, who loathes the fiery-haired man with a passion, starts complaining to her boss that she can't work with him because she hates people who just talk and are worthless. Cry, hearing these words, thinks she described him perfectly and blames his colleagues, who spread the rumors about him being the strongest, for all these lies. At any rate, Cry wants to know if the guests are ready for the mission, and Gilbert is the first to respond, calling it all a joke and saying it's an insult that someone so useless is at level 8. Greg tries to warn him that he's provoking the wrong person, but the swordsman doesn't care what others say. Cry simply kicks Gilbert out of the mission. With that settled, he asks Greg and Ruda if they're in, and they confirm. Furious, Gilbert expects the Master of Strange to beg for his approval, but Cry couldn't care less about his refusal. And wow, Cry just earned 200% in my protagonist book for simply expelling this annoying guy from the team. Cry then asks Tino if she needs anything, and she takes the opportunity to say yes, she needs the master. He makes it clear that's not happening. With everything resolved, Cry prepares to leave, but Gilbert challenges him and mentions that if he loses, he'll join the group. Cry tells him Tino is the leader, so she'll be the one he faces. Tino, never holding back, declares she'll deliver divine punishment to Gilbert using the incredible reach she developed through rigorous training, and I'm rooting hard for her, confident. The swordsman promises not to hold back and challenges Cry again as soon as he's done defeating her. Obviously, fighting is the last thing Cry wants. But Tino captures the challenger's attention, warning him that, although she's also level 4, she's still nothing compared to the master. She then says that, to avoid killing him, she'll fight unarmed and that just her body will be enough to destroy him. Cry thinks that Tino should handle this arrogant guy easily, and his only worry in this fight is the so-called Purgatory Blade, as this relic could become quite a challenge in the hands of someone skilled. Surprisingly, Gilbert follows Tino's lead and drops his weapon as well. Tino then says that after crushing this guy, she'll get ice cream with the master. But Cry doesn't seem thrilled about the idea. The rogue sulks to get her way, and the boss gives in just to keep the peace. Motivated, Tino now has the perfect excuse to fight like it's her last day. And with that in mind, she rushes Gilbert with surprising speed. Gilbert barely dodges the first blow, but there's nothing he can do against the following kick. Taking his first beating of the day, and I hope it's not the last. Determined, he doesn't give up and counters the girl, but she dodges easily and mocks him for challenging her master. Although he seems entirely beaten, Gilbert turns things around and regains control of his body. Then, Tino smacks him on the neck, finishing the poor man, or so everyone thought, because while the others already considered him defeated, well, folks, he resorts to the divine power found in anime, that is, the flashback of determination. So here we go. Since childhood, he outshone some adults in swordplay, and it wasn't long before he grew up and moved to the capital to pursue his dream career. He formed a group and sold several treasure chests, and this success gave him a feeling of invincibility. Now, faced with the current situation, he returns to reality as his rival calls out to him. She says he should use his sword if he wants any chance of surviving. Gilbert refuses, but she warns him that pride means nothing when you're dead. Willing or not, the swordsman agrees, though he can't accept being weaker than his opponent. Cry intervenes, telling Gilbert they're a lot alike. Just as Gilbert left his last group due to a gap in strength, Cry went through a similar situation. However, in Cry's case, no one was left behind. Rather, they didn't leave him, no matter how much he wanted, but obviously, Cry doesn't say this aloud. Hearing this, Gilbert is struck by the idea that Cry is benevolent, even as he leads the most feared clan in the capital. He then starts seeing Thousand Tricks as a kind of entity, and I already think our protagonist is some sort of charmer. This can't be real. Meanwhile, Cry approaches the defeated man's sword, identifying its elemental damage and enhanced attack range, and comments it's a simple yet good weapon, so the swordsman should take good care of it. But things start getting weird here, as after Gilbert realizes Cry activated his sword far better than he ever could, reaching a flame he'd never achieved even after wielding the blade for years. Gilbert yells that this is simply impossible and calls the Stragri leader a monster. And I'm starting to suspect that this guy isn't weak and just unaware of his true power. Moving on, Cry explains that mana material is considered the world's fundamental substance. But, though it's everywhere, it can't be seen by the naked eye. Treasure chests are a phenomenon where spiritual lines and other forces condense mana material, creating limited alternate worlds based on memories from the world's core. The rules governing this phenomenon are studied in many realms but remain not fully understood, and the White Wolf's Nest is one of those treasure chests. Originally inhabited by lupine monsters called Silvermoon, they were hunted to extinction for their pelts. Afterward, the chest appeared, along with a blood-stained ghost in the form of a wolf. Reading about this in the newspaper, Cry is a bit scared and points out that a treasure chest with a vengeful history is a bit too much. Ava argues that it was Cry himself who put the group in this situation, but he assures her that his team has the level needed to overcome the challenge. As the chest is level 3, they'll have 4 people, and Tino is joining. By the way, our protagonist thanks her for explaining why Gilbert left his old group, as he could use that information at the right moment. Moving forward, the clan's vice master mentions that the master put on quite a show with a relic in the training room. He replies that it was easy to control, especially since even Gilbert managed to use it a little, without any real knowledge. Speaking of which, Cry loves collecting relics of all kinds of powers and forms, mentioning he'd love to know if Gilbert would sell the Purgatory Blade. Hearing this, Ava loses her patience, pointing out that he already has several relics like that sword, and on top of that, he even borrowed from Citri due to debt, and even though he receives the same commission as all the other strange members, the clan doesn't generate endless money. Embarrassed, Cry tries to find a counter-argument, but can only remember that he needs someone to recharge his relics. So he approaches 2 allies, and while the woman recharges the relics, the man tells him that a blood-stained ghost wolf appeared near the White Wolf's Nest and destroyed an entire caravan with level 3 escorts. Cry thinks his team can handle it without issues, but the man insists that the ghosts in the area are getting stronger. The woman adds that Rudolph Devu, a powerful level 5 caster, also appeared there. And Cry recalls that this guy is on the wanted list for a guild job he accepted. Worried that the mission might fail, the leader hopes Gilbert at least recharge the Purgatory Blade. Speaking of the team already heading to the nest, Tino doesn't help the atmosphere by revealing she left a will before departing, figuring that if her master sent her on this mission, it wouldn't be easy. Even so, she believes Cry would never assign her a random group. On the other hand, all the other members, except Tino, think this is the most random team possible. At any rate, Gilbert accepted the job because Thousand Tricks even knew why he left his old group. And Tino explains that the guy is a deduction genius with extensive knowledge of the capital and its surroundings, so he must have deduced that from Gilbert's words. Ruda doubts this a lot, but Greg thinks only such a methodical mind could have coldly calculated the incident at the bar. Taking advantage of the speech, Tino reinforces that the master planned everything for the mission to go smoothly and would never send a group to their death without careful thought. And speaking of the devil, after sending a group to certain death without thinking, Cry decides to meet them in time to order the mission's cancellation. Back with the team, they barely arrive before encountering a ghost wielding a sword and shield at a level well above humans. Meanwhile, Cry is rummaging through endless chaos, looking for relics, and Eva scolds him for carrying a Citri slime, which is illegal under Imperial law. But the boy has no time to waste and will have to make do with it. With that, he flies off with a relic that basically turns him into Batman and soars away. While Eva mentions that the flying relic is the same from the human missile incident that sent someone packing. The relic, called Night Hiker, is basically uncontrollable.